Welcome to this edition of The Bigger Game. I'm Abiza Rashid, and our guest today is Roxy Chalice from Cathedrals. Welcome, Roxy.
Hi, Abizer. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
I appreciate your time. Thanks. I know you're a busy lady, and I appreciate you taking time to be here today. Tell us about Cathedrals.
Cathedrals is a novel grief work program. And the premise of it is that you have already within yourself, through intuition and imagination, the tools to resolve your own psychological and emotional pain. And because it's kind of based in kind of more energies rather than cognitive structures, it moves very quickly and you can get a big felt unlock.
Wow, sounds fascinating. Inside of all that and who you are and your perspective on life, when you think about the bigger game, what does that mean to you?
I think the bigger game has to do with understanding how much capacity we really have as creators. How much, if you can imagine it, you can bring it into being. And I think when you start bringing some of that implementation, using your mindset, using these kinds of imaginative tools, it unlocks a whole new kind of realm of experience. And kind of like we were talking about, before we jumped on the podcast here, that, there's always the option to choose into a bigger experience alongside whatever is happening. We actually possess the tools internally to do that. So when I think of the bigger game, I think of the bigger game as that alternate plane that's right alongside the plane we think we're limited to, where we can play big, break out of the boundaries and the limitations that we have believed were so rigid for us. Beezer, are you frozen? I can't hear you.
I am back.
There we go.
All right. Sorry. So can you repeat the best? This is real life, right? We're talking about real life. I guess there's one more experience to that. Would you mind repeating the bigger game? You started talking about that, about reaching full potential, and then you started saying something else. And I think that's when technology had its own conniption.
When it froze up. Yeah. So I think the bigger game happens when we realize that we have another strata right alongside our lived experience, the world that we know, right? The reality that we're born into, the reality with its problems and its limitations, and this is who we are, and these are the roles, these are the expectations put upon us. I think the bigger game happens when we realize that we are equipped with these imaginative tools, and there is another bandwidth right alongside the reality we're living, and that we actually have the capacity to jump in and out of the imaginal space and to use the resources that are there to meaningfully, rapidly, materially alter the reality that seemed so fixed to us before.
Strictly by choice at the end of the day, it seems like.
Yeah, it's choice. It's I think obviously we've heard a lot of conversations around like attitude and the role that attitude plays in our lives. It's all about attitude. It's all about your attitude. But I think that can feel like a little bit of a frustrating loop. I know it has for me in the past, especially when, the house is burning and people are like, it's all about your attitude. You're like, yeah, well, my attitude is my house is burning, right? I mean, this is what's happening. It's easy for you to say, well, your house is not burning, that it's all about my attitude, right? So I think it is about choice, but I think more than that is to understand kind of the aperture that's available of how we enter into that. So attitude is what you recognize once you're in that space, right? So, my program is called Cathedrals. Cathedrals is, imagine this.
Twice in a row.
Oh no.
All right. So
We're back.
Try one more time. Sorry.
Yeah. So cathedrals, speaking of a cathedral, you imagine stepping into this space, imagine like looking up, right? And just seeing that it goes and like the beauty and everything about a cathedral, like kind of elevates you upward. It's expansive. It's beautiful. Its whole function in life, the reason a cathedral exists is it's a triumph of imagination over human limitation. That's what it embodies. And everything about the structure of it and even the visual presentation of it is about elevating us up and elevating us to the realm of beauty and possibility, right? When you think about cathedrals and the time in which they were driven, I mean, the build on these things, it defies gravity, it defies the laws of physics, what they had to maneuver in order to build these structures, right? And so I think attitude is something we can understand without inner conflict when we're standing in the cathedral. When you're already in there, you're like, oh yeah, attitude is everything. The question is, if you're not in the cathedral, like if you're still in the dank cave and it's claustrophobic in there and it is dark and it is hot and you are isolated and it feels panicky and someone talks about attitude, you want to punch them in the throat, right? Like that is not helpful. You are not having that experience of like your chosen attitude. Oh, it's really about your attitude? Really? So says you from the cathedral. But once you're in the cathedral, yes, it's attitude all day long. Like make the right choice, man. And so that has been my personal journey, has been over the years to try to understand, how do you get into that cathedral where you can say and mean that it's all about attitude? And so the work that I've been doing is figuring out, what is that aperture? And it has to be universal, right? It has to be innate. It has to be built in. And so where is it? Where's the access point for that? And that's where I, through kind of working backwards through my own experience of grief and loss and trauma. And I went back and I kind of mapped it out. Like, how did I get out of the hell into an expansive place where I wanted to be alive again, where life was good, where I could say, yeah, the air's good here. I'm happy. Life is beautiful. It's all about attitude, right? How did I get there? And that's when I started to really hone in on imagination and realizing that it's the use of imaginal tools. It's one of the things, do you ever notice when you're observing children that they do like such a fast pivot, right? So like you'll watch them at the playground and like they, a bigger kid comes and takes their toy and they're losing their minds and, like they're sobbing like the world is over. They are feeling it. They are fully immersed in their experience of loss. This is everything. Me losing this toy is all that exists, right? I don't think we're so different, by the way. That's what it's like to be in the cave. That is what it's like to just be so over-identified in the struggle. And like, I can't breathe. I'm not happy. I don't have a choice of an attitude. Everything is over, right? And then something that comes along and hands them a new toy. Oh, new toy. And like the tears haven't even dried and they're in bliss. They've moved on, right? And part of the reason they do that, I think, is because they're very much in touch still with two crucial things. They're in touch with intuition and they're in touch with their imagination. And I honestly believe that these are systems that are onboarded in us as human beings for the purpose of giving ourselves the reset, resolving and healing, just like how our bodies in its physical form has a lot of healing mechanisms built in. This is why it exists and what it's meant to be used for. And so that's the big moment. I think that was the thing for me, was to realize, okay, there's an aperture, there's a way in. Saying it's about attitude to a person who's in the cave or in the burning house, that's just going to piss somebody off, right? But take them into the cathedral, show them that there's an easy access point and that you can move rapidly. Like that child, you can be from all is lost, I can't bear it, there's no possibilities left, to actually things are good, life's good, I'm moving on, right? And that's by design.
That's fabulous. perhaps speak to, you talked about your journey that you've been on and that allowed you to, come with this epiphany and now start applying it. Perhaps share a little bit about that journey with us, about how maybe a specific example or two that would kind of bring this home to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's one of the things that has been a long time struggle that I grappled with is if there were a hall of fame for trauma and tragedy, I would I would be there, right? It's just I hit all the big ones from earliest life. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. I had to go through extensive treatment for that. There was just a lot of losses, and prior to that, prior to the experience, I guess that I'm gonna talk about, I'd already had a series of losses and traumas, all the big number ones, and then in 2016, my daughter passed away unexpectedly, and that is, probably the experience that I mind the most in terms of understanding how do I be okay? Because, my day job is like, I work in the death care space. I'm a funeral advisor. I work with families around loss and grieving all the time, all day long. At this point in time, I've worked with hundreds, maybe even thousands of families in this space of going through loss. And, one of the things that started to strike me is that, my experience is a little bit novel in terms of, the plane of existence that I'm occupying on the other side of losing a child, right? So I've met lots of families who've lost children, and you'd be amazed. I would say be gentle with the unknown stranger, because you'd be amazed who's moving among us and like how raw and fresh they might be out of a devastating loss. It happens a lot more than I think we would want to think, that people lose children, right? And then they have to go on living. They have to go to their jobs and they have to do all things. And it's unthinkable to have to live through that. But one of the things that I noticed in being able to interact with a lot of these families is that I feel a really complete release around my experience of loss with my daughter. I feel like a really full acceptance of that experience, in part because my daughter does not feel lost to me anymore. And the reason that is that I sort of intuitively began to use imaginal tools to continue this relationship and to build on this relationship with my daughter once she was passed away. And actually, there's an interesting body of research coming out about this right now, exhorting those who are in bereavement to continue to have conversations and to continue to build new and fresh memories with someone who has passed away, which seems very strange. But one of the things that they draw upon is they say, listen, this conversation, Abizer, you and I are having right now, we're having this conversation in our imaginations, right? That is the nature of subjectivity, is that we are imagining the other and we're imagining their imagining of us. It is entirely an imaginary exchange, right? And so in that sense, it's not that different to continue on in imagined correspondence with someone that you've lost. And it's a really important piece. And so what I started doing is there was kind of this process of imagining and writing this fictional story where I built a world with a very colorful cast of characters where I could seek out answers to the questions I had. And I could bring my rage and my confusion and my sadness, and I could work it out in this imaginal plane, which is something that I now call that the sandbox. In the Cathedrals program, that's called the sandbox. It's called proxy healing. This is when you use an imagined space. You can pick your world, you build the characters. I take everyone through a process of how to use intuitive tools to select that. But once you can imagine a sandbox here, an imaginal sandbox. You're going to put some characters in there. You're going to put a world, you're going to put a climate and a landscape and a set of rules. Worlds always have rules, whatever the case is going to be. You can put some objects, you can put some conflicts, you could put a whole bunch of emotions or avatars that represent emotions. And then you can put, and this is one of the most interesting pieces that emerged in the course of writing the novel that I ended up writing about my daughter. That was the process that I used in order to get a release around that loss. And one of the most striking things was something I call costuming, right? This is techniques that we can use, imaginal techniques that we can use to protect the identity, like keep anonymity for parts of ourselves that feel fragile, which sounds kind of odd, but there is some really interesting research. In fact, the leading treatment modality right now for complex PTSD is something known as internal family systems. And internal family systems, in a very reductive, like simplified way, is that within each one of us is, within you, a abuser is a 2-year-old abuser and a 3-month-old abuser and a 10-year-old abuser and a 21-year-old and a 45-year-old, and whatever the case may be. All of those ages exist. And they have, in a way, their own kind of psychological self. And they're all there existing, and there's relationships that exist between these various iterations of you through these stages of development and experience. And some of those parts are operating as what's called protector parts. And the idea is that until someone has done some work to kind of process and resolve and integrate what's gone on for themselves trauma-wise, all you're encountering with someone who's been through trauma or loss are the protector parts. That's it. There's a whole bunch of key actors that are hidden behind the protector parts. But, I don't know, you can imagine linebackers, right? This is all just line. They're all just meant to guard what's behind, which is where the most of the truth of a person.
Wow.
And so that's kind of the idea. So there was costuming, which is very interesting because, this might be anonymity from other people who are collaborating in the work you're doing, but it might also be anonymity for yourself, which is interesting. There may be parts of you that are not yet ready to reveal themselves to other parts of you because we do hold ourselves in a lot of judgment. And so that's a really important piece. And I think one of the things that tends to get missed, and I've decided that this is really critical in getting the unlock. And this is where this is going to be the aspects of ourselves that are considered to be more deviant, right? This is going to be pieces of ourselves that maybe not only do we not want others to know is there, but we don't even want to fully reckon with it ourselves. And so one of the things we do in the Cathedrals program is we learn strategies, camouflage, mimicry, costuming, defensive measures, so that those pieces can be in the sandbox. Because if you put everything in the sandbox, but you keep out the aspect of you that is deviant, which I believe holds really important truths about who you are. It's the DNA, actually, is in those parts. And so that part that we most repress, the reason we can't get unlocked is because we left the DNA out. So we can build in the sandbox all day long and it's never going to come to life. When I started putting the deviant pieces of myself into the book I wrote about my daughter, that's when it took on life. And that's when I started to get set free. That's when I started to really feel in like a reconnection with her. She does not feel removed from me. She does not feel dead or distant or gone. She feels alive on another plane that feels, sacred, connected, and actually more in my control than if she were with me, in a living state.
Wow. So it's about how much we run from the pain, right? Embracing the pain, embracing the brokenness, the deviancy, whatever word one wants to put to it.
But it's too much to take that on.
It's kind of like the rubber. That's kind of like the Band-Aid, right? I'm either pulling the Band-Aid off real fast and being done with it, or I take it off like 1 millimeter at a time, and I suffer through years of trying to pull this Band-Aid off my arm. It's just like that, and being able to just be with the pain and be better for it at the end of it.
And what I would add to that Band-Aid analogy is, and what Cathedrals is about, and what has been the breakthrough in my life that has allowed me to live a full and free and buoyant existence despite a lot of trauma and loss, is that turns out there's a technique for removing that Band-Aid that is a bit oblique, and that's the secret. So like facing all that pain head on, that's what a lot of the grief work that is out there today asks us to do, right? We're going to come together in a group of people who have had the unluckiest lots in life, who have had misfortune and loss that boggles the mind, that is not fair, that is not even, that is not comprehensible as human beings. And we're going to take turns revisiting it and endeavoring to hold space for one another with it, right? And we're going to try to make some cognitive structures that are going to kind of help us navigate it. But that's a really tall order. It's a really tall order to take on that level of pain. And at a certain point, the mind breaks, which is where, again, the intuition and the imagination comes into this. When we come at it obliquely, so this sandbox, right? That's why the costuming exists, right? This deviant self, in my particular case, she is this fantastic, wacky godmother character who dresses in this very like over the top fashion and will give you tough love, and like has her own, like there's all this like very interesting, but then she has this really compelling backstory, right? But this is not like Roxy's deviancy or Roxy's, deepest, darkest feelings of shame or inadequacy or loss or hurt or secrets or whatever, just in their raw form, right? So it's using the vehicle of play and using the vehicle of this creative configuring, right? Metaphor in a lot of ways, right? And so we're creating something. It's art, but it's art where the medium is this sandbox full of all of your own kind of intuited inclinations, and then everything inside of you that hurts and holds pain and holds the energy of grief or loss, repackaged though, with a nice protective mechanism around it, so that they can play and participate and keep the secrets that they need to keep.
So it basically turning avoiding pain into relating from relating to it as an avoidance, right? Like I'm going to avoid pain, to almost a blessing that it is, right? And once I started doing that, the pain pretty much, disappears. It's no longer pain. Now it's wisdom, or now it's, a battle scar that I can talk to you about and laugh at, right? I cut my finger cutting watermelon, so you can see the scar, right? When it's a scar, it's like, when it's a scar, it's funny, you can talk about it. When I first did it and it's a fresh cut, it's like, oh my God, the pain, all of those things. So,
I love that.
Yeah. So
I love that analogy.
Your take of this is to, your take of this is to turn life's journeys into the blessings that they are. I mean, whether you believe in God, the creator, source, nature, whatever, if you believe that it's benevolent, then everything that's happening to us potentially is happening for us out of benevolency.
Yeah.
So when you can take that approach and convert it to a blessing like you're talking about, I think there's a lot of power there, and a lot of, the potential you talk about when you first started the call about the bigger game, playing to your full potential, allows me to really step into that potential even more, because now I'm uniquely me. And my journey has left me with my own blessings that nobody else has.
That's right.
So I'm the only one uniquely able to give it to other people. And just like that, every other person on the planet, should they choose to, has the ability to look at it as a blessing and be there for others uniquely in a way that nobody else can. That's fantastic, Roxy.
Right. You know, I've heard one of the biggest challenges in this like expansive computer age with AI and all these things happening with the supercomputers is the issue of storage. And I think that's very interesting because what I would want to say about this is we are locked up doing so much storage work. We're trying to store all this pain, right? We're trying to store it. We're trying to protect it. We're trying to keep the environment such that we can maneuver through our lives while we're holding on to all this pain. What Cathedrals is about is recognizing pain is fuel. Pain is fuel. If we transmute it, now this is a raw energy source that we can then direct in our lives. And then, then we're like the most authentic, unencumbered version of ourselves. Now we are vibing with energy. And like you said, wisdom, release. I can't say enough about forgiveness and the energy of forgiveness and how contagious forgiveness is, and that you don't have to take somebody through their entire life journey. You don't have to walk them. You know, something I learned about forgiveness when my daughter died, we have this notion about forgiveness, like you forgive and then forgiven or not forgiven. No, forgiveness is like every time I remember my daughter's death, I have to forgive her for dying and forgive everyone who contributed to her death, myself included, right? Like you have to forgive every single time. And so the thing about forgiveness is it's so contagious that you can come into an encounter with a single serving individual, just somebody you're meeting in a grocery store or whatever. When you are embodying that energy, when you've taken your pain, you've transmuted it into forgiveness, and you have an aura of forgiveness around you, when you get close to another person, they will also enter forgiveness. Now, they might leave forgiveness when they leave your aura, but it is such an interesting thing to move through life in this graced way, where you're forgiven and everyone you encounter is also forgiven as long as they're encountering you. It's just like every obstacle just gets pushed aside. It's really a magical thing to experience because all the instance when you're like, life is so hard, I'm so victimized, I'm so angry, I'm so tired, I'm so sick of this shit, it's just never gonna end. Why me? It's always me. This is so unfair. I can't take it anymore. And then you go in the grocery store and you bring all that energy and it encounters everybody else's energy. And you know what happens? Resistance. No, we don't have that. No, we can't do that for you. Sorry, I was in the line before you. Like this, right? It just becomes this thing. And everything you try to do, more bad shit happens, right? And you can just add it on my tab. Just put it on my tab of all the ways that my life unravels in shit and drama and loss, right? But you change that, you transmute that in yourself, and that's forgiven. And you're not thinking, why me? And it's never going to change and everything's shit. And here we go again. But you're just like, I wonder what's going to happen next. I'm so excited about the possibilities. The air is clean. I feel connected. I feel open. I feel observant. I feel glad to be here. I feel peaceful within. And you walk in a state of forgiveness into the grocery store. And even if everybody else is in their resistance, you're going to come in there. And weirdly, and I've experienced this firsthand, people are like, can I do something for you? Can I give you this? Would you like assistance? Would you like to go ahead of me? Right? Just like on that most basic level. And that's what we don't understand about these things. At the end of the day, it is energy, and there is an aura of energy around us. So if you do your own work, your path gets cleared regardless of whether anybody else has done theirs. Because as long as they're in your aura, all the obstacles just kind of lie down.
I think you just talked about, we have this experience of certain people in our life, they walk into the room, everyone could be sit around just being bored or whatever.
Yeah.
And this person walks in the room and the entire room shifts.
That's right. For better or for worse, right?
Yeah, I was pointing to people that bring some energy and shift the room and lighten up everybody's faces when they walk in. Right? And they've even done anything, just walk into the room.
Yep.
We've all experienced, I think many of us have experienced that in one form or another. And I think you just gave us some underpinnings of how that occurs. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because, the goal of coaching and the goal of all of that is to, potentially be that person for others and for myself, right? No matter what modality you choose, what path you take, those that are interested, I think that is like the holy grail for a lot of people to be able to do that. Because the benefit, like you said, if I change the energy, my results change for myself anyway. It's an equation of one person, me. And the only thing I have control over is me, nothing else. No environment, situations, no people, no nothing, right? Just me. It's all I have control over, and that's all I need control over.
That's right, because that's enough. That's the thing. If we think about the scale of what's contained in pain, if we think about it as fuel, if we think about it as energy, I mean, it's massive. We're talking really big frequencies that are contained in that, right? So, yeah, you turn that around, it's a game changer. Yeah.
Excellent. So, talk about a lot of things. I think that forgiveness piece was huge. The energy conversation, the grieving and how to move on from that. So thanks for sharing all these, some of your life experiences and kind of, your take on living life. Really, it's been refreshing. Is there anything you want to leave us with as you wrap this up?
I mean, I think the thing would be like, in looking for that aperture, right? Trying to find your way out of the bad air, the choking air, into something clean. One of the things I use as a litmus test is if there's not humor in it, it doesn't have that high frequency or like that divine quality, whatever you want to call it. So if you're looking for something, there's always going to be that signature of humor, right? And not a mean humor, but there will always be an element of humor. I think, that's one of my litmus tests in terms of just as I'm feeling things out and seeing if this is a path forward. If this feels overwhelmingly serious, there's no space for humor. It's not sourcing from the right place. When you are dealing in these frequencies of like ease and elevation, transmutation, always humor. So it's one of the ways you can check it. What frequency am I working on right now? What energy am I working on? If there's no humor in it, it's not the path. It's going to take you right back into bad air, victimization, all your stories, everything that has you in the cave,
So I wonder if this applies or doesn't apply. Obviously, you've done some healing work around the loss of your daughter, which is, to me, still overwhelming and incomprehensible. Does what you just said apply to that as well, or not?
Yes. So one of the thing that was necessary for me when I started on this process, actually, it's interesting. I was very much, it was 2016. I was very much in the raw state of grief. My infant daughter was dead. I was still pumping breast milk as part of my grief process, right? And so I'm like in my nursery that I had for my daughter, I'm pumping breast milk as still a coping mechanism, even though she's not here. And so I was very much in the raw state. And when the invitation to this work arrived to me, it was a little bit of a daydream, but it was very bizarre. And I feel really gifted in this way. And this is the reason I want to bring this into the world as a program is like, I feel so incredibly privileged as far as my access, and I can't really explain why that is. And it just arrived. Really, it just arrived. It was just like an imagining. I mean, I'm a writer. I was in the process of writing some other novels and some other things at the time that this happened, but all of a sudden I get this imagining, and I knew right away it was a different quality than other, writing work I'd done, other, kind of invoking stories work I'd done. This woman just arrived. She just plops into the chair in the room, right? And it was like kind of on that gap between real and not real. And she has like crazy blue hair. She's obviously like postmenopausal. She's wearing like this tracksuit, and then she has like these beads around her neck, and she's wearing this bling that says, Jesus was a Republican. And she just like, it was this very, she was just all kind. She was wearing like these leopard print Doc Martens, and she had this wry smile and this big attitude. And she starts having this conversation with me about how I perceive my situation and how, when I decided that there was something wrong with me, and when I decided that there was something wrong with what was happening. And, you know, it's kind of a little bit, it's tricky to describe. I've endeavored to write about this a lot, but this was the thing. I was in a really wrecked place, but she was so damn funny, right? She was very funny. There was humor. There was some kind of gentleness, even when she was telling me hard truth in this imagined conversation, which I then went and wrote down. And ironically, you know, that was in 2016. And I remember not being able to sleep for a couple of days because I was like, this is the most unusual creative experience I've ever had. Like, I guess this is going to be my new book. Like, I've never had an experience like this. And then nothing, crickets, nothing until 2021 was the next time I had like a breakthrough of like having more come through. And then it all came through, like whole cast of characters and the title and all this stuff. But yes, what she so bizarrely, and what I endeavor to do in the novel is, yes, to bring humor even to something like that, right? She would bring an element of humor, as strange as that seems, to this experience of my loss of a child, and like modeling for me that it's okay to laugh at yourself, even in the midst of devastation. And that's kind of a theme that runs through the book.
So almost a level of humility.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Excellent. So with humility, I think we'll leave it there. What a great way to end it.
Yeah.
Thanks for those final thoughts. Roxy, if someone wants to connect with you, how do they connect with you?
So the website is roxychalicewrites.com. It is still in building, but will be up and live before too long. And in the meantime, you can reach me by email, roxychalice.plan@gmail.com.
.plan?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Roxy. Thanks for, I know you're all over the place and so busy, and I appreciate you taking a minute to share with us, your life journey. It's been most enriching. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed the conversation.